Gordon Margaret Cancora, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to make a brief contribution on the Universal Jurisdiction of Human Rights Bill 2015. And I want to warmly commend my colleague, Deputy Mick Wallace, for bringing this bill before us and for the enormous amount of work he's done on this important bill and all its related issues. One of the fathers of international law, as you know, Ken, is the great Jan Amos Komensky, known as Comenius, the great Czech philosopher who made a very important contribution in the early 17th century to advance ideas on world peace and universal justice. And he was writing about international, if you like, peace and legal structures at a time when the German people were embroiled in the 30 Years' War, where at least 8 million Germans were slaughtered by different invading armies. And at a time of desolation, he tried to get a prohibition on warfare and indeed the creation of universal institutions of humanities. In the first couple of Dáils I was in this House, Can, I strongly support the setting up of the International Criminal Court. You might remember it was, I think, the Radical Party of Italy which led that campaign and which regularly communicated with us here in Dáil in order to try and bring the idea forward in the mid and late 90s, and especially in response to the incredible horrors that we saw in the former Yugoslavia. So the Rome Statute, of course, the International Criminal Court was adopted by 120 states on the 17th of July 1998, but it wasn't until the ratification, of course, in 2002 that the ICC became operational. And it didn't, of course, have retrospective jurisdiction, and we've heard that, of course, a number of countries where atrocities have been committed are not participants in the statute. The ICC, of course, has done some very valuable work over the years, I think, in attempting to address the perpetrators of savage attacks on citizens and in pursuing mass murderers such as Radovan Karadzic of Bosnia-Herzegovina, Slobodan Milosevic of Serbia, and indeed General Ratko Mladic. Unfortunately, many observers think, of course, President Franjo Tudjman of Croatia and other promoters of ethnic cleansing in the Balkans, they escaped the censure of the ICC for some of the reasons I think Deputies Wallace and Daly have outlined here tonight. And to date there have only been 23 cases, I think, before the International Court, and the ICC has issued 29 arrest warrants, and only 8 persons have been detained in the detention centre to appear before the court. And according to their website of the ICC, 13 persons remain at large. Charges have been dropped against 3 persons due to their deaths. ICC judges have also issued 9 summonses to appear, the judges have issued 6 verdicts. So there is obviously a platform there, but at the moment it's a platform which can't really address, I think, the scale of horrors that humanity has witnessed, indeed even in the last 40 or 50 years. One of the issues, of course, Ken Corley, which I know you'd agree with, is that the United Nations organisation itself has been kept so weak and marginal over the years, especially by the powerful permanent members of the Security Council, especially the United States, China and Russia. And it's clear that the mission of the UN should include the promotion of democracy and justice and a system of full accountability for leaders who inflict terrible harms on their own citizens. So I do believe the bill before us, I've heard the Minister's comments in relation to the 2006 Act, but I think it will strengthen Ireland's participation in universal jurisdiction by amending Section 7, subsection 1 of the ICC 2006 Act, and the more narrow wording of, and I quote, any person who commits genocide, a crime against humanity or a war crime is guilty of an offence, end quote, is expanded, of course, to say that any person, whatever their nationality and wherever in the world, commits a crime against humanity, a war crime or genocide, is guilty of an offence and is liable upon conviction to imprisonment for life by the state. I think as previous speakers have said, that Ireland should take a prominent and leading role in pushing forward the concept of universal justice. A notable example, of course, of universal jurisdiction, as a number of speakers have said, was when the Spanish judge Baltasar Garzon, with the support of France, Belgium and Switzerland, indicted General Augusto Pinochet, the former dictator of Chile, who overthrew the democratically elected Allende government. And of course, Judge Garrison and the speakers have said, look for Pinochet's extradition from the UK, where he's receiving medical treatment, but unfortunately the UK authorities seem to make sure that he was found to be in ill health and the extradition trial didn't proceed. The bill amends Criminal Justice United Nations Convention Against Torture Act 2000 and the International Criminal Court Act 2006, as I said, retrospectively, and provides for those who breach human rights to be charged and convicted. And I've heard the discussion about the definitions about crimes against humanity, but I think again the definition of, and I quote, when committed as part of a crime that's committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack, end quote, is a fairly comprehensive definition, which also, of course, includes murder, extermination, genocide, apartheid, torture, rape and so on. I think since over the last 100 years, there has been a small but growing determination among international opinion to try to bring to justice leaders and politicians who have committed massive violations of human rights. We recall, in fact, the concept being alluded to by President Woodrow Wilson in his 14 points. And unfortunately, some of the democratic developments in the early 1920s, including the establishment of our own state, turned into, of course, the even more murderous era in the 1930s and 40s. But I think that the Nuremberg prosecutors and the trials of the surviving Nazi leadership marked a first watershed in attempting to create an international legal order and an order of accountability and justice. There are a number, of course, of international treaties to ensure the beginning or the further use of universal jurisdiction, which include the 1949 Geneva Conventions, the 1973 Convention Against Apartheid, the 1984 Convention Against Torture. Human Rights Watch itself calls universal jurisdiction, and I quote, a critical tool by which victims of grave international crimes can obtain redress, end quote, and an important means of reducing the unevenness of the landscape of international justice. But even since World War II, of course, Cancorla, we've seen incredible instances of genocide, mass murders and other terrible crimes against humanity, including the mass oppression in China, where the Tibetan and Uyghur peoples had lost their national independence and were crushed, the appalling crimes committed in Vietnam, Laos and especially Cambodia under the Pol Pot regime, the mass slaughter of Indonesians of Chinese descent, the genocides and ethnic conflict in newly independent African states like Uganda, Rwanda, Igbo land in Nigeria, the Congo and currently in newly independent South Sudan. And this is the point, of course. We have events like this happening as we speak. Horror has been perpetrated where two factions battle it out and men, women and children, ordinary people, suffered drastically in the process. And of course we had many other oppressive regimes and terrible conflicts, including crimes committed in apartheid South Africa during the military dictatorships in Argentina and Chile, the appalling carnage in former Yugoslavia referred to, and the mayhem and mass murders during the past 15 years in Iraq, Syria and Yemen. And they've all cried out, Cancorla, for accountability and justice. And I note the points I think that have been made many times in this House by Deputy Wallace, Deputy Dáil and others in relation to the sale of weapons to, for example, Saudi Arabia and the way that those weapons have been used. Many people would say in a form of genocidal attack on the people of Yemen and indeed in other areas as well. So the tragedy for this is, of course, we watch the news, Cancorla, and we were shocked and disgusted at these kind of happenings around the world, and then we go back to our daily lives. But I think Deputy Wallace has tried here tonight to, not to take just that response, but to see if there's something very small even that our state, our proud independent state, can actually do about it. I do feel, again, of course, that the United Nations itself, we need to have a much more strengthened and proactive role in dealing with those who commit crimes against humanity. And the UN clearly needs urgent reforms and strengthening. And I hope, Cancorla, in the opportunities you might have in various fora, that you might try to push forward reports such as the one from the European Parliament in March 2015 entitled Reforming the United Nations, State of Play, Ways Forward. Because some of the elements are mentioned in that, and our state and the other European Union states are the biggest, I think, financial supporters of the UN, that we might get a much more responsive and accountable international order. And at the end of 2016, of course, a resolution was adopted by the General Assembly to establish a unit for the investigation of serious crimes that had been committed since 2011 in Syria. But the Syrian government has consistently refused to comply with the resolutions of the Security Council. And Human Rights Watch, for one, are saying that universal jurisdiction, such as proposed here tonight, should be used in relation to Syria, and the International Criminal Court must be given a mandate in relation to the ongoing conflict and subsequent crimes. So, in conclusion, I warmly welcome Deputy Wallace's Universal Jurisdiction of Human Rights Bill, and it offers a hope that there will be no hiding place for politicians and leaders who have led and promoted hateful crimes against their own citizens and against humanity. Thanks, Canon.